into authentic conversations about ourselves and our community, exploring topics that uplift and inspire us, from personal growth to social change. So grab your teacup and get ready to join the conversation.
There. Why do people stay?
You know, one of the things that is really important when you're talking to a jury or a case is that the lay public, the general public, obviously always has the why doesn't someone just walk away? And something that's really important to understand from a victimology standpoint is the sense of omnipotence that even in everyday relationships, somebody who has power and control over someone can exert. It's about the perception of the victim. And in this case, I'm certain that the forensic psychologist would have been looking at both the victimology and the offender's behavior to try to explain that to the jury.
So often in these types of circumstances, and even with this case, we've seen the comments online, people saying, well, she could have just left. What do you say to that?
I say that regardless of how high profile the matter is, such as this one, or to the millions of women that are suffering from intimate partner violence at home, that is the fundamental misunderstanding that is important to explain, especially in a criminal case to the jury, is that when somebody is in a domestic violence or an intimate partner or coercive control situation, that concept that lots of people think about, it's why don't they just walk out the door? Why don't they just take their things and go? That the psychology of it can be so overwhelming and so powerful for a victim in that stance that it feels impossible, and perception rules the day.
Dr. Erin Nelson, thank you so much for being with us. And we should say, if you are experiencing domestic violence, help is available. You can call the National Domestic Violence Hotline 24/7. That number is 800-799-7233. Still ahead, breaking down the legal strategies at play on both sides. Rapper Kid Cudi in court today. Could evidence pose an issue for the defense? And the rivalry that's defined hip hop for a generation, how it's tied to this Diddy trial. Today, including a big name in hip hop who we've been talking about, Kid Cudi. Let's break down the key legal strategies that we saw. We have Brian Buckmeyer playing the defense, Bernarda Villalona playing prosecutor. Let's get right into this. The police report, Bernarda. A break-in to Kid Cudi's home in 2011. Does this actually matter?
It does matter in the sense of not really the break-in, but the arson part of it. But the break-in just leads you to believe, like, Jesus, how demented is Sean Combs? And I think that is what the prosecution was trying to drill to this jury, to show how his jealousy, his anger, his rage, and his being possessive over Cassie, like how far he's willing to go. And I think that's exactly what was the strategy of the prosecution, in addition to, of course, what was important, the arson part, in order to meet that racketeering conspiracy part, because breaking and entering is not part of it.
Brian, did they prove that it was him?
I think they got very close. I think there's actually a bit of a mistake by the defense. And what I mean by that is during the direct examination of Kid Cudi, it got to a point where they led us all the way to the edge. It was like, oh, maybe Sean Combs did or maybe he didn't. But when Kid Cudi talked about arranging a meeting at the Soho House with Sean Combs and was asked why he did it, he came out and said, well, because I thought that Sean Combs was a part of this. Now, they objected to that and it's sustained. They should not contemplate that in the end of the case. But as we say as attorneys,
you can't unring the bell.
Can't unring the bell.
Jury heard it.
So I think it's going to be difficult for the defense there.
Okay, the jury also saw photos of Kid Cudi's car. What was the prosecution trying to do there with the pictures?
Well, they're corroborating that there was an arson that took place. So aside from Kid Cudi's word that his car was blown up by a Molotov cocktail, you also want to show the photographs because the picture is worth 1,000 words, right? So by showing it, the jury got real insight as to look how serious it was. So that corroborates the testimony.
Do you think the evidence is a problem for the defense?
I think they're going to try to steer away from it. They're going to say, okay, an arson happened. We're not sure. Maybe Collins did it or did not do it. They're going to say, this is what a jealous boyfriend does. This is not what a sex trafficker does. I think they try to reposition themselves as to who doesn't have an ex who has tried to burn up some of their clothes or their cars.
But their car?
Yeah,
the car?
yeah, it's what crazy exes do.
Blow up cars?
Right.
Yeah.
But I don't want that crazy.
I think that's the only argument they have here, because they can't really go away from it wasn't Sean Combs, because so many of the breadcrumbs and the circumstantial evidence does point to him.
Yeah, and also you have, remember the email that Cassie has sent to her mother talking about the threat that Sean Combs made about causing harm to Kate. So I think it's strong there that it was Sean Combs that was responsible, or someone working with Sean Combs. And again, conspiracy is a part of the indictment, so you got it there.
It was interesting to see the picture anyway, because we all heard about that and hadn't seen the pictures of it yet.
Exactly.
Cassie's former makeup artist also testified. She said she saw alleged abuse. And that's, what's interesting about that is we've now heard multiple people say they saw this alleged domestic violence.
And multiple incidents, more importantly. We're not talking about the same incident. We're talking about now several incidents throughout these years that they were together.
Does that matter in all of this?
Yes, because remember what the prosecution is saying is that this violence is tied in the sense of the coercion and the control that Sean Combs had over Cassie. So that way Cassie wasn't really able to consent, be a willing participant in these sexual acts and these freak-offs. So it's all tied into it. So it's not just domestic violence. When you tie in the domestic violence with what Dr. Hughes testified to yesterday, and you put that all together, then you have a more clearer picture that there's no way that Cassie at all times was able to consent to these freak-offs.
I think it's a little bit difficult, though, for the government in this sense, though, because I think they might lose the forest from the trees in the sense of if this was always a domestic abuse relationship, which they have said it is, and they have all these incidences of domestic abuse, where are we separating from when it's just simple abuse that doesn't lead to a freak-off and abuse that does lead into a freak-off? Because we have all these incidences of abuse, but not always leading to I'm doing this so you participate in a freak-off.
But all you need is one. All you need is one when you're talking about sex trafficking or transportation to engage in prostitution. All I need is one freak off that was where she wasn't a willing participant, where she didn't consent to in order to make out the charges.
All right, we'll leave it there for now. Thank you both so much for being with us. Coming up, who is Kid Cudi and what some might find surprising about his high-profile appearance today, plus why the rapper's dog is one of the most searched topics tonight related to the Diddy trial. Welcome back. There's a lot of buzz surrounding today's big witness in the Sean Diddy Combs trial, Grammy-winning rapper Kid Cudi, who briefly dated Cassie Ventura, who has this message tonight after taking the stand.
People have been hitting me up the past week, just checking in, and even today. This is a stressful situation. I'm glad it's behind me.
Joining me tonight, ABC News contributor and DJ Megan Wright. Megan, and thanks so much for being with us. For people who don't know, who is Kid Cudi?
Kid Cudi is a real, I would say, hip hop gem. Okay, he is a Grammy Award winning artist, producer. He's also an actor. He broke out into the scene in 2008 with his hit single Day and Night. But here's the thing, we don't really see much of Kid Cudi outside of when he's promoting his art. We really don't. He doesn't do a lot of interviews. He's not in a bunch of paparazzi pictures. He really keeps to himself, but he has a very strong and very loyal fan base, which is why him showing up, at this trial, even just him getting out of the car, fans seeing him, in his jeans and in his leather jacket, smoking a cigarette like we see here, that was very surreal for fans because, again, you're kind of getting an inside look, of this guy that you don't really get to see so much, talking about something that not just in the hip hop community, but also fans have kind of heard rumors about. But I don't ever think there came a point where we thought, okay, we're actually going to hear or read, a transcript of what Cudi is talking about relating to his car blowing up. And then we hear, a set on fire. And then we hear, the play-by-play of everything that happened with Cassie. And then we hear, about his dog, and then going to, see Diddy and him standing like a Marvel supervillain. Like, I don't think people expected that, especially from a guy who is usually very, very private. It was definitely surreal.
Yeah, getting to see those pictures today was really interesting. Suge Knight's name has been mentioned a few times in this trial already. Can you just give us a little bit of history here and how it's tied to this like long-standing East Coast, West Coast rap rivalry?
Sure. Yeah, the East Coast versus the West Coast, hip hop rivalry is one of the most talked about rivalries of all time. And of course, you have the beef that came from that, which is, Big versus Pac and also their respective labels. Okay, so you have Big, who was signed to Bad Boy, which was helmed by Sean Combs, who at the time went by Puff Daddy, who now, of course, we refer to him as Diddy. Then you have Tupac, who was on Death Row, which was under Suge Knight, and so if I can get the story as quick as possible, it kind of goes, these two guys, Pac and Big, started off as friends, but things kind of changed in 1994 when Pac was shot outside of Quad Studios. He blamed Big and Puff, who both said they didn't have anything to do with it. But then, things kind of, led and went, forward with this back and forth. This records were put out. And although you can't say that, this beef led to their murders, Pac was murdered in September of 96. Big was murdered in, March of 97. And it thought this stayed in the 90s. It didn't, as you can tell with what happened in the trial.
Yeah, we're hearing about it again. Megan Wright, thank you so much for breaking that down for us. Sure. Now, there's no cameras in court during the Sean Combs trial, but that is not stopping people from going online, trying to keep up with all the latest updates from the courtroom. And that's where our daily segment Searched comes in, where we break down some of the top search trends about this case. Some of today's biggest searches: Molotov cocktails, Kid Cudi's dog, how much Diddy paid Cassie, and when will this trial end? Joining me now, from Los Angeles, is our ABC News contributor, Kelly Carter. She covers entertainment and pop culture for us. Okay, let's start with the Molotov cocktails. That's a term that came up during Kid Cudi's testimony.
Yeah, people want to know what that is because we've heard about the alleged incident with the car. Of course, Sean has denied any allegations of arson, but Kid Cudi and also Cassie have alleged that this happened. Wanted to see what that looked like, and finally people got a chance to see those photos. So they want to know what it is, and obviously it's a very illegal, dangerous, handmade bomb.
We also have to talk about Kid Cudi's dog because that also came up today, and people have questions. So what is there to know?
Yeah, I mean, well, the dog is no longer with us, first off, but he said his dog was very distressed because the dog, after, again, an alleged break-in, was placed inside of a bathroom and locked inside of a bathroom, and the dog was extremely jittery in the aftermath of that experience, and no one wants to hear that about a dog.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everyone loves a dog, right?
Yeah.
Now, also, it's interesting because it's been a couple days since Cassie Ventura took the stand. Her testimony, though, continues to really generate interest. Here's one of the searches that's trending. How much did Diddy pay Cassie?
Yeah, it's interesting how that keeps coming up, right? Because, again, her testimony was last week. And in her testimony, she revealed that she was paid $20 million from the 2023 civil suit that she filed, and that was settled inside of 24 hours. And I think people probably keep coming back to that as new information comes out in the trial because they're, again, trying to connect all the dots here. And I think that's probably one of the biggest ones that there is out there to connect.
Kelly Carter, thank you, as always, for joining us.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend. And thank you.
We're going to pause it right there. Okay, they're wrapping up. I'm going to review and fill y'all's teacup up on some of the things that are going on. So, yes, right, Diddy has always been in the conversation of Tupac and Biggie's death, right? There's a lot of content out about that, y'all. Dating back since Tupac got murdered, Biggie got murdered. Y'all can definitely Google and find 100 million documentaries on it. Diddy usually 9 times out of 10 pops up on it. Diddy was the Bad Boy manager and producer that Biggie Smalls was signed to. East Coast, West Coast. Tupac was on the East Coast or West Coast. Biggie was on the West Coast. And, it's speculation that Puffy is surrounded in the murders of both of those laid to rest rappers. Okay. So rest in peace to Kid Cudi's dog. I wonder what kind of dog he had. Let's see. A Molotov cocktail is a explosive bomb that people usually put in a bottle with some type of explosive liquid in it, gasoline, perhaps, or however have you, something very flammable. They put a rag out of it. A rag is inside of the bottle and it hangs out the top of the bottle. They light the outside of the whatever they have hanging out the bottle, a ripped up t-shirt, whatever, however have you, and they throw it at whatever they're wanting to blow up. Okay, that's what a Molotov cocktail is. So we've got some Kid Cudi on the.
Good evening. I'm Mike Marza, recapping what has been another key day in the trial of Sean Diddy Combs. Another celebrity testified today in the federal sex trafficking trial of Mr. Combs. Performer Kid Cudi was on the stand. The rapper telling the tale of threats.
Make sure that you guys are liking and subscribing as soon as you come in the room and have your teacups filled. Make sure that you always give back by liking and subscribing. Thank you for sipping tea with Tanisha. We're wrapping up week 2 of the Diddy trial. Tomorrow there is no court nor Monday. Okay, Monday's Memorial Day, so Diddy will be in his cell from tomorrow until Tuesday. Okay, we're gonna sip some tea now from ABC 7 News on the trial recap for the week.
Against Cassie Ventura, and evidence showing an act of arson, prosecutors say, on Mr. Cudi's car, on Kid Cudi's car. One he says that Combs is the one behind. In a moment that you'll hear in just a moment, as we talk about exactly what went down at the Soho House in Los Angeles. A lot to get to. ABC News legal contributor Bernarda Villalona standing by to dig deeper into everything that unfolded in court. But first up, with a recap, here's Darla Miles.
Scott Muscati, Cassie Ventura, and Sean Combs, a romantic rivalry that federal prosecutors allege led to unthinkable acts of intimidation. The 34-year-old musician and actor known as Kid Cudi taking the stand Thursday morning. Muscati testifying today that he and Ventura dated in 2011 during a breakup with Combs. Also telling the court when Combs found out about the relationship, he got a frantic call from Ventura that she was nervous, stressed, and scared. The next phone call, Muscati says, was from Capricorn Clark, an employee for Combs, telling him that she, Diddy, and another person were inside of his house.
So, is Capricorn Clark a girl or a guy? They just showed a picture of a girl as they mentioned Capricorn Clark. Do y'all think that's a girl? I thought it was a bodyguard or something. It looked like it may be a girl. Drop some tea in the chat and let me know if you guys know if Capricorn Clark is a girl or a guy.
Muscati telling the court that he immediately called Combs, recounting the conversation for jurors. He said, "Expletive, you in my house?" He was like, "Yeah, what's up?" I said, "Expletive, are you in my house?" He said, "I just want to talk to you." I said, "I'm on my way." He said, "I'm here waiting for you." Muscati going on to say when he got home, no one was there and he called the police. It was just 2 days ago when federal prosecutors showed the jury this email Ventura sent to her mother, dated 1 day after the break-in, claiming Combs was threatening to hurt Muscati. Then a few weeks later, in January 2012, Muscati says his dog sitter texted him these photos of his red Porsche, telling him his car was on fire. Prosecutors asking, "What did you see when you got home?" Muscati responding, "Just the damage. I saw the Molotov cocktail." "What was your reaction to the damage to your car?" Muscati telling the court his reaction was, "What the expletive?" But defense attorneys pointing the blame to Cassie Ventura, asking, "The person who played you, the person who played Sean, was Miss Ventura, true?" Muscati answering, "Yeah." And as to the two incident at Muscati's home, the defense asking, "There was no forced entry to the home." Muscati answering, "No." Defense attorneys also asking, "In the last 13 and a half years, have you been notified of any action in this case?" Muscati again answering no. Now, there are 4 other prosecution witnesses on the stand today, including a former personal assistant for Combs who said he quit after witnessing the violence with Cassie Ventura and another girlfriend. There was also a former makeup artist who says she saw injuries on Cassie Ventura, and a hotel manager who says they had to charge Sean Combs an extra $1,000 retainer whenever he reserved a room because he frequently left it dirty with candle wax and baby oil.
Our thanks to Darla Miles, joined now by ABC News legal contributor Bernarda Villalona. A lot to get to, as always, in this case. But let's start with Kid Cudi, because he was one of the more high-profile witnesses to take the stand. Take me to this moment. We're talking about the car that was firebombed. We saw the images of the car. You see the hole and the Molotov cocktail that was thrown in to light that fire. There was a moment that involved the Soho House, a meeting between Kid Cudi and Sean Combs, and the allegation of a supervillain. Take me through the testimony and what jurors heard today.
Oh, my God. So it was literally with this case is like can't stop, won't stop. There's always something going on. So in terms of Kid Cudi, so if we take it back a little bit, because it starts off with the breaking and entering in the sense that someone entered Kid Cudi's home and opened up some gifts that he had at the table. And supposedly there was a conversation between Sean Combs and Kid Cudi, and Kid Cudi was like cursing, "Are you at my house?" And Sean Combs says yes to that extent, but then when Kid Cudi goes there, Sean Combs is no longer at the house. Fast forward, dealing with this Molotov cocktail that is placed inside of the Porsche of Kid Cudi. Car blows up. We saw all the damage to his car. That very same day, Kid Cudi is like, he contacts Sean Combs and he's like, we need to meet because this is going way too far. So that's when they have that meeting at the Soho House where it's Kid Cudi, it's Sean Combs, and at some point Cassie enters. But in terms of when Kid Cudi says he goes inside of the Soho House, inside of this meeting room where Sean Combs is, and that Sean Combs is looking out the window and that he has both of his arms behind his back as a Marvel supervillain. Literally, the courtroom just started laughing at how Kid Cudi portrayed Sean Combs. But either way, they kill the beef, so to say, and says like, look, I'm not with Cassie anymore. We're ending this. Like, this violence needs to stop.
Yeah, because when Kid Cudi said, what's up with my car? Essentially,
exactly. He says, what car?
What car?
What are you talking about?
Not
Pretty
even
much.
really acknowledging it. Why was his testimony, Kid Cudi's testimony, so important for the prosecution?
So Kid Cudi's testimony is very important for the prosecution for the specific act, the predicate act, the racketeering act of arson. So in order to make out racketeering conspiracy, they have to prove, aside from the criminal enterprise, they have to prove that 2 predicate acts were performed. One of the predicate acts that the prosecution is alleging is one of arson. Now we know through Kid Cudi, when it comes to arson, they are talking about how it's alleged that Sean Combs was involved or personally involved in the bombing of Kid Cudi's car. So that's why it's important. Now the prosecution is trying to get through those predicate acts to try to get that racketeering conspiracy. It's going to take a while for the prosecution to get to proving racketeering conspiracy because it involves so much when you have to prove the criminal enterprise and also the racketeering activity.
In the first week of testimony, we heard a lot about allegations of sex trafficking in different cities and different escorts and Cassie herself. What about the racketeering charge? How close are prosecutors to saying, haha, this is exactly what we were talking about in the opening?
Yeah, so they're getting there little by little. So they're jumping around a bit. So, for example, today they had Mr. Kaplan testify, who was Sean Combs' personal assistant for about 2 years. Now, in terms of how they were working him for the racketeering conspiracy, they got out through him that he helped set up the rooms for these freak-offs or for these night outs or hotel stays with Sean Combs. And also he purchased some of the items on the corporate credit card, bringing in the enterprise.
Gotcha.
That after Sean Combs would stay in these rooms for these lavish stays, that he will clean up the room. Remember that the room is always a mess because of all the baby oil and fluids and stuff.
And he felt a responsibility to protect the image.
Yes, and again, protecting the image is part of the racketeering conspiracy that the prosecution is saying that the purpose of this criminal enterprise, aside from to carry out these criminal acts, but also to protect the image of Sean Combs. So they're inching at it little by little. They're not there yet, in my opinion. I think for them to get that racketeering conspiracy, I really think that they need a deep insider, a close confidant of Sean Combs to come in and testify and be like, look, look, I did this at the direction of Sean Combs, or to continue and further these acts that he wanted to perform.
And the defense, from the defense point of view, they're trying to say Sean Combs was violent. We see that on the video. Sean Combs assaulted Cassie Ventura.
There's no running away from it. It's on video.
Exactly, he's on video, and he's not charged with that, though. And so how effective has the defense been able to be in poking holes in the actual charges that he's facing?
Let's be clear. He's not charged with domestic violence. These are federal crimes that he's charged with. But the domestic violence is important because the prosecution is saying the domestic violence, it was causing Cassie to not be able to willingly consent to these freak-offs, can't consent to this sex trafficking, because we heard from Dr. Hughes yesterday that because of the physical and emotional trauma that she suffered at the hands of Sean Combs, and because she's so traumatized where she feels hopeless and is not able to get out of this relationship because of the control that Sean Combs had over her financially, emotionally, physically, that she's not able to consent. So while we say domestic violence is not part of the charges, it's a part of the acts in the sense of involving Cassie. The defense is going to clearly continue to say, this is a domestic violence case. This is domestic violence. We're owning up to the domestic violence, but this is not sex trafficking. This is not transportation to engage in prostitution. And in terms of the racketeering conspiracy, what the defense is saying, there's no criminal enterprise here. Whatever acts that other individuals within the business, within the corporation did, they did it independently aside from Sean Combs, and that no one's going to come in and say that they were part of a criminal enterprise, that they were part of this RICO conspiracy.
The former personal assistant finished his testimony today, Mr. Kaplan.
Yes.
Did we learn more about why he was asking for immunity?
So I think, first off, it's normal for a witness to ask for immunity. For example, I'm a criminal defense attorney. I used to be a prosecutor for 16 years. If I think there is any viable crime that you can charge my client with, and you want my client to come in and speak, yes, I want a proffer. Yes, I want an immunity, because I am not going to take your word for it that you're not going to come after my clients. So I rather say, give him immunity, and then he'll testify in order to protect them. Because he testified, there's a few things he testified that could have opened him up to criminal liability. The narcotics. Narcotics. Possession of narcotics. Not that it's viable that the U.S. Attorney's Office is going to go after him, but you just never know.
Gotcha. Because that was the headline yesterday. He's asking for immunity. What does that mean? And so I'm glad you cleared that up.
And just to be clear with immunity, he cannot be prosecuted for any crimes that he may have testified to, with the exception of if he commits perjury. Immunity does not protect you against perjury.
Final question for today, turning to tomorrow, and it's court's on recess.
Yes.
So now you've got this break for Memorial Day, and that includes Monday as well. So you have then Friday, then you have Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. How does that play with the jury? I mean, they've heard so much up until this point. This is going to be the biggest break they've had.
So, Mike, I'm concerned. I'm concerned when there's ever a break in a long trial. And the reason why is because during that long break, people are watching the news. People are exposed to social media.
Even though they're not supposed to.
They're not supposed to be hearing, but it's inevitable to not hear anything about this case. It's being played everywhere. So I'm concerned about that, because what if someone is inadvertently exposed to media coverage about this case, and they're not supposed to be exposed to it, and though they start doing research about the case, or someone tampers with the jurors? There's so much that could happen. We can come back on Tuesday. I wouldn't be surprised if someone tells me, oh, one of the jurors have something to say to the judge about something they may have been exposed to. So you just never know. But in terms of how does it also play, is that you have a long weekend where they're not listening to testimony. They can be thinking about the testimony, or probably doing some research when they're not supposed to. You just never know.
Interesting. We'll see how that plays out. 4 days is a long time when you think about this trial at such a quick pace so far, and then to come to a complete halt. Bernarda, always great to get your perspective. We appreciate it. So as we mentioned, the court resumes on Tuesday. That's when the testimony will start back up. Stay with Eyewitness News and ABC 7 and Y for any new updates. We have a real-time blog of what's happening in the courtroom.
All right, we're wrapping up week 2, going into a long weekend, okay? I think tomorrow I'll come on and review the Diddy on trial. Or excuse me, not Diddy on trial. The United States versus Diddy. Okay.
Thanks for watching. Remember to show your support by liking, subscribing, and sharing. It's a blessing. Keep your teacups filled and ready for my next upload. Until then, stay inspired and remember, always stay dipping.